Pretty much for the past few weeks, everywhere you look, you're going to see on TV some legal defender of Donald Trump. But it turns out that his legal defense team goes a bit deeper than just whatever Rudy Giuliani is currently saying. So joining us now to break down what's really going on, what this law firm is really all about, is the justice correspondent for The Nation. Joining us once again, Elie Mystal. Welcome back to the Damage Report.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Always glad to have you on, always enjoy your work. So you did an article about Jones Day, one of the biggest law firms in the country. I actually don't know much about it. What are they all about?
Yeah, so Jones Day has been the Trump administration's law firm of choice. Right from the get-go, Trump hired 14 lawyers out of Jones Day to be a part of his administration in various capacities. That's unprecedented. I know we use that word a lot when we talk about Trump, but that is truly abnormal for one law firm to get so much power from one administration. And Jones Day has paid that forward by being Trump's kind of legal representatives in so many of his cases. They're basically, I would call them almost a wing of the Justice Department at this point. They've done so much work for the president. Now, Jones Day has, I wouldn't call it a checkered history exactly, but this is a firm that, put like this, people within the legal community are not surprised exactly that Jones Day is willing to make some of these terrible arguments in the favor of Trump. They're actually got they're an old firm. They started in Cleveland, and they really rose to prominence in the 80s on the backs of big tobacco litigation. So these are you have the tobacco lawyer DNA, if you will, in the firm. And I do not say that, kindly. That's, that.
Oh, I got that.
Right? The thing about it, and look, I believe, and I mean this seriously, John, I believe that one of the most noble things a lawyer can do is to defend one of the, some of the worst people in the world, right? The lawyers who defend terrorists, the lawyers who defend murderers, the lawyers who give a competent legal defense to our very worst people are part of the reason why the system works. And so I hesitate to criticize any lawyer because of the client that they choose to represent. But I have no problem criticizing lawyers who will stand up in court and make bad, frivolous, destructive arguments in furtherance of that client. And that's what Jones Day is doing. They have stood up in court repeatedly to make bigoted, xenophobic, and fundamentally, and I know this word doesn't seem like this should be the capper, but frivolous legal arguments on behalf of Donald Trump.
I think that is a great distinction to make. I know some people growing up don't understand why like a defense attorney would defend someone that seems so guilty of the thing they're being accused of. But this isn't like, they're not defending Trump. Like they may say they're doing that. This is an incredibly aggressive, like Uzi spray of lawsuits across the country. It seems different, but really fast, just because I'm actually not sure. Trump, he alluded a few days ago to the fact that these aren't his cases. These are cases to defend other people. But it is his law firm. They are tied to him, correct? Like the 30 odd cases he's lost over the past 2 weeks.
I mean, they're trying to play some semantics here, right? Some of these are cases that are, there are very few of these cases that are brought by Donald J. Trump as the named plaintiff, right? Some of them are brought by the RNC. Some of them are brought by individual citizens that Trump has joined, but they're all part of the Trump organization. And again, I'm not gonna make this analogy idly. It's kind of like the mob, right? Michael Corleone is not the defendant in every single mob case, right? But it's the button man, it's the pusher, it's the whatever that are all kind of represented by the mob lawyer. In this analogy, Jones Day is acting as the mob lawyer. So they're defending other parts of the organization, other people who have interest in the organization at the behest of the Donald Trump campaign and Donald Trump's arguments. That's how they're tied in. So Trump is, technically right to say that if they're not his case in terms of him being the named plaintiff, but they're all in furtherance of Trumpian arguments. And that's why the Trumpian lawyers are willing to do that work.
Rudy Giuliani a couple days ago said that, sure, we're losing these cases, but that's just part of the strategy of getting to the Supreme Court. And certainly they have lost. You shake your head. So what's your response to that?
It's just, again, when I say frivolous, there is a rule, and I don't want to get too technical, but there is a rule. It's called Rule 11 that is supposed to sanction lawyers who bring frivolous lawsuits. So when Rudy Giuliani, or most specifically President Trump, says that they withdrew from a case in Michigan because they already won, because they succeeded in delaying certification of the vote, that is an extra legal outcome that they were looking for. So they were looking to use a frivolous lawsuit to delay a process happening outside of the courtroom. That's unethical. And I know saying unethical seems like such a small word for what this administration does, but that is actually textbook legally unethical, and their lawyers should be reprimanded and sanctioned for doing so and admitting so in public. They won't be, because institutions are cowards, and we've seen that time and again. One of the things that the Trump administration has done so well is to expose institutional cowardice throughout our system. So it's unlikely that these lawyers actually will be punished, but they should be. What they're doing is, again, textbook unethical. And that's just in terms of trying to get cases to delay certification. You were going towards cases that they're specifically trying to get in front of the Supreme Court. There's only one case of all the 30, 31, 32 lawsuits that they've brought. There's only one case that has even a snowball's chance of getting in front of the Supreme Court. That's something that's happening out in Pennsylvania, where they're objecting to the counting of ballots that were mailed before Election Day, but received after Election Day because of basically post office shenanigans and lateness. There is some chance that the Supreme Court will weigh in on that case. None of these other lawsuits, at least at this point, really have any real chance of getting in front of the Supreme Court. Some of the other issues, again, could be, but there's of the 30 odd frivolous lawsuits, only one could be called a Supreme Court test case.
And the one that you referred to there, having to do with those ballots that were mailed before Election Day but were received after, which I can't believe that we're even questioning whether those should be counted, but I guess maybe we will. That, if I remember correctly, that is not enough votes to, even if they all went for Donald Trump, to overturn the gap.
Not even close. Not even close.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why it might not get heard by the Supreme Court, because even though apparently the Supreme Court is interested in hearing this case and potentially throwing it towards Trump, even the Supreme Court has indicated, even the conservative, awful, intellectually dishonest Supreme Court has indicated that it's unlikely to weigh in on an election lawsuit that is not dispositive in the election. And so you're talking about getting the court to weigh in on a case that, as you say, John, does not have enough votes to overturn the results in Pennsylvania. And that even if they did overturn the results in Pennsylvania, the results in Pennsylvania do not have enough electoral votes to overturn the outcome of the election. Why would the Supreme Court do that? Why would the Supreme Court kind of waste that bullet? One of the things that I think people need to understand is that what we are seeing from the Republican Party shows that they are absolutely willing to steal an election. They have no qualms about straight up stealing an election. It's just that they got beat too badly to steal this one. And so one of the things that I think people need to be very concerned about and stay vigilant about is that all of these tactics are what they would use to steal an election if it came down to just one state. And that's something that we got to worry about in 22. If it's Senate for the Senate, it's something we got to worry about certainly in 24, and pretty much going forward now, because the GOP has shown that it's willing to do this.
Yep. I mean, he's going to be meeting with the leaders of the Republican Party in Michigan. He's called to meet with those in Pennsylvania. Perhaps he'll be writing about that in the near future. But that's
election fraud.
Exactly, and it's amazing when like the Supreme Court would have to do all of what you just described, this crazy long shot thing, and these legislatures in Michigan would have to overturn this 150,000 vote gap. It's this huge confluence of things that each individually are anathema to democracy. It's an amazing time we're living in. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.